I'm Chloe Jenkins, 34, and I found out the brutal truth about my own home during my parents' 35th wedding anniversary dinner. It was supposed to be a celebration filled with laughter, prime rib, and clinking wine glasses, nothing out of the ordinary in our very, very ordinary family. But in one sharp, perfect moment, my grandmother put her fork down and looked straight at me across the flicker and glow of the dining room candles. "How are you enjoying the beautiful house I bought you?" she asked. Now let me set the scene. As this question floated over the table, I was still squashing myself nightly into a one-bedroom apartment. It cost me almost $1,300 a month for something so cramped that calling it a home feels generous. A radiator that never warms up until it's time to sleep, and a shower that turns frigid without warning. Every third day, I'd finish a double shift, dreaming of burning water, only to get an ice-cold slap instead. I remember exactly what happened, the little gestures you never forget in a moment your life turns. My sister's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. The scrape of my mom's chair as she suddenly surged up, filling everyone's water even though every glass was brimming. My grandmother had thrown a spark on dry grass, and everyone felt the heat. No one sitting at that polished table saw what would come next. What I dug up 3 days later from my mother's locked dining room cabinet was worse than any lie whispered above linen and glass that evening. Before it was over, I'd sign paperwork my family never thought would exist, sit down at that same table, and calculate, literally calculate, what my role as the dependable daughter had cost me to the cent. But to really understand all that, you've got to rewind a week, just 1 week. For 12 years, I've done night shifts, graveyard in the pediatric trauma unit, Kids Hospital, Grand Rapids, Michigan. I patched myself through nursing school doing doubles, living on vending machine coffee and raw grit. I've consoled more terrified parents than I'd ever care to tally. Medical crisis. My pulse never flinches. But quiet, normal, seemingly harmless weeks. That's when my life usually nosedives. Tuesday morning. I reached home, bleary, after another 12 hours at the hospital. There was a letter taped to my mailbox from property management. My rent was about to jump, $1,120 to $1,290, an extra $170 for the honor of keeping a parking spot that neighbors routinely swiped. I stuck the notice on my fridge, watered my little windowsill monstera, his name's Barnaby, and stood silently in my rented cell. Doing the math in my mind, yeah, I could make it work, tighten the screws somewhere else. I always did. Here's the thing, when you're the one who always figures it out, everyone else stops wondering if you should have to. My phone rings for every logistical disaster in our family. Heart medication issues, insurance not paying up, the legalese in a dense form. I handle all of it for my parents. I keep their paperwork organized, precise, dated, bulletproof, like I do my medical charts. The only non-hospital plan in my upcoming week, their anniversary dinner. And of course, I was the one charged with making it happen. The big worry? That the roast wouldn't be out of the oven fast enough. I truly thought that would be my highest stress. I have never been more wrong in my life. Family dinner dynamics, our version. Watch us set a table. My mom, Miriam, 63, conducts like she's running a military campaign. After 30 years administrating the front office of the local high school, there isn't a space she can't dominate. Dad, Richard, 65, spent his career inside HVAC systems and now battles stress by scrolling traffic or weather. Storm warning 3 counties away. That gets him out of an argument faster than any lawyer could. And Harper, my younger sister, 31, works as a coordinator at a chiropractic clinic, divorced 2 years from a guy named Derek who vaporized, gone with a stranger and impressively with someone else's suitcase. She's got a 5-year-old son, Leo, our family's brightest light. I love them both ferociously. That should be said right now before the story unwinds. Let me rewind further. Harper got pneumonia at 6 and my mom slept at the hospital a week straight. I was 11, home alone, feeding Dad, surviving on boxed mac and cheese. When Harper came back, my mother placed her hand on my head, like a paycheck and a commission, and murmured, "Family carries family, Chloe." I was proud to be her helper, but I didn't get it then. In our family, carrying meant I'd be the one always hauling the burdens, even if nobody asked what I wanted. It wasn't a win-off. When I was 17, I had a modest nest egg. Savings bonds, birthday cash, lifeguard summer jobs. Mom managed my money in a custodial account for my safety. Then Harper hurt herself on a trampoline, jaw broken, teeth knocked loose. Surgery bills were staggering. My mother sat me down, gentle, explained they needed the money just for now, and I was strong enough to handle it. I said no, firmly. The account was in her name, so legally it was as good as gone. I never saw that college fund again. But I paid for school myself, nights and weekends and calluses, and didn't owe $1. Back then, I thought that was a victory. No one called it stealing. It was borrowing, always helping out, tiding over. And I accepted for years that the family river only redirected little things, gift money, small loans. I believed lines existed. I had faith there was a point where they'd stop. I was completely out of my league. There was no line. Back to that dinner. I had prepped everything, took Friday off, handled cake, linens, airport runs for Grandma. The whole production for their 35 years in the suburbs. That's Evelyn Sterling. 84, still more hurricane than retiree, my mother's mother, stubborn as they come. Walks with a cane but uses it like a weapon, not support. Even after selling her dairy farm, she could size up a room like it was a ledger, finding every flaw. She flew up from Scottsdale for the party, lips done, coat heavy, eyes sharp. She hugged me with intent I felt in my bones. We rode to my parents' house, small talk at first, her asking about hospital work and Barnaby the plant. Oddly, her focus darted away from Harper, which wasn't her style at all. When we walked into the house, she sat quietly, surveyed the room. At the time, I chalked it up to travel fatigue. Later, I knew, she was taking inventory. Dinner started as usual, Dad's meeting Mom's story, his version, then hers. Harper had little Leo draw trains at the table, show off his wobbly handwriting. At some point, Harper mentioned redoing her back patio, custom pavers, fire pit, her house, her project. My mother looked proud. My father gave a wise nod about low-maintenance stonework. I cracked a joke, I always do. Don't hire me for manual labor, my landlord just hiked my rent. I can barely afford a folding chair for my parking lot patio. Polite laughs, all but one. I was watching my grandmother. The joke hit her dead on. She stopped chewing, staring at me so hard it felt physical, the kind of look she gave a field before a thunderstorm. She tracked my mother next. The fork settled onto the plate, slow as anything. The conversation went on around her. Leo wanted a roll, my father yammered about concrete sealant, but Evelyn waited. The room shifted colder as she watched for silence. Mom stood to clear plates, and my grandmother flashed a smile. A special one, gentle but knowing, the kind that says, "You're not fooling me." Her voice was clear when she turned to me. "So, Chloe, how are you liking the house I bought you?" I stared. "What house? Grandma, I still rent, same little apartment." I half laughed, thinking maybe she was just confused, maybe this was some funny family anecdote, but nobody else laughed. The silence that followed had teeth. You could hear the kitchen fridge. All eyes moved, not to her, but to my parents. A detail I'll never forget. Confused people look at the speaker. Guilty people look at each other. My mother hovered there, still pouring glass flooding onto the heirloom tablecloth. She adopted her most dazzling, artificial tone. "Mom, you're just tired. Long day flying." Dad stared holes through the garage door. Harper, head bent, stared into her lap. Leo, the honest 5-year-old, piped up. "What house?" Nobody answered him. Grandma let the tension build. Then she laughed, a deep, casual sound. "Old age," she joked, waving off her bombshell. "Don't mind me." She toasted my parents, asked for potatoes, acted like nothing earth-shaking had happened. Everyone breathed out all at once, except me. I watched her. Those hands didn't shake, not for a second. She ate peacefully, told a farm story, watched everyone. All the while, beneath her glasses, her eyes stayed needle-sharp. My pulse hammered in my chest, as if I'd seen something dangerous and couldn't quite prove it. Cake, then coats. My mother sweetly suggested my father drive Grandma to the hotel. Grandma didn't even look up. "Chloe will take me," she said, matter of fact. Mom started to argue, trailed off when Evelyn said, softly but firmly, "She is directly on my way." Nobody. On the way in Rockford, but no one argued. The first part of the drive was quiet, her cane across her knees like a baton. In the parking lot, she turned to me, expression cloudless. I am not senile, Chloe. 2 years ago, I sold the dairy farm and wired your mother $185,000 for you to buy a house. That money was yours. Upstairs in her hotel, we sat side by side, tracing her logic, her paperwork, her disappointment. She sold everything after Grandpa died, stowed her part of the legacy, and wanted to help. She knew Harper got the big wedding, the fancy gesture, the big spend. She saw the patterns I saw, she always did, knew which daughter the river of family resources had always flowed toward. She wanted, for once, to set the scales right while she was alive to watch. That was her intention, straightforward as numbers penciled on the back of an envelope. But reality had gone sideways the moment she'd sent the transfer. Neither of us, not then, had guessed just how far the old family patterns stretched, or how deep they'd reached to maintain the system that had always kept the dependable daughter carrying the weight. That's where it all started unraveling. And looking back, I can still feel the ache of that night, the brittle taste of the truth hanging in the air, the beginning of the price I'd pay for always figuring things out. Here's what really happened. My grandmother had this stunningly simple, generous plan. She wanted to buy me a house just for me. She went about it quietly, arranging everything to hand over the keys on my 32nd birthday, right down to tying a ridiculous cartoonish ribbon around the mailbox. Except that spring, she ended up needing a full knee replacement. No travel, no standing around at a real estate office up in Michigan. There was no way. So when my mom leapt at the chance to handle everything, the search, the paperwork, the signatures, Grandma, feeling lucky to have a solid, reliable daughter, just wired $185,000 directly north. She wrote my name and the words "for Chloe's house" right on the transfer memo, as clear as she could be. She waited, expecting my rapturous, screaming phone call, barely holding onto the phone, probably scaring the neighbors. But the call never came. What showed up instead was this gorgeous bouquet of lilies and white roses, with some prim little florist's card, my name scribbled at the bottom. Grandma still has that card, actually. She told me so in a voice barely above a whisper, digging it out of her purse like a sacred artifact. I kept this card, she said, holding it between us, all worn and thin. It's the only thank you ever sent, Chloe, but you didn't write this. You would have called me. You would have cried. You would have made it awkward and lovely the way you always do. She handed me the card and I recognized the neat, round handwriting instantly. My mother's handwriting, not mine. I'd never sent Grandma flowers, not once in my life. Somebody else had been putting words in my mouth for 2 whole years. My skin prickled, realizing there might be all kinds of things I supposedly said. This is how you keep a stolen house a secret for 2 years straight. Not by hiding keys or changing locks, but by building walls inside the family, turning every conversation into a dead end. Mom spun a massive lie and propped it right up on top of me. She told Grandma I was drowning under brutal hospital shifts, that I was private about finances, and that I'd be too proud to accept a house outright and make a big scene about it. But the crown jewel of her manipulation was convincing Grandma, swearing her to secrecy, not to mention the house because Harper, my sister, was struggling after her divorce. "Don't bring up the house," Mom had said, as if I'd bring it up when I was ready to keep from hurting my sister. So Grandma, who grew up on small-town etiquette the way some people grew up on Bible verses, kept absolutely quiet. Never once brought it up for 24 months. She seriously believed that's what protected my dignity, kept things calm. Every polite silence on our calls became another brick in Mom's fortress, their weight landing on all of us. And Grandma played right along without even realizing. She almost slipped once. She asked me, "Are you all settled in, sweetheart?" I thought she meant my dumpy, new one-bedroom place, the only thing I could afford back then. Cheerfully, I said, yeah, I loved it, small but totally mine. Months later, when Grandma wondered to my mom why Chloe called a 3-bedroom house small, Mom didn't miss a beat. She just laughed and said, "That girl she'd call a castle cozy." Then she changed the subject. Anytime Grandma started questioning, no photos, no invitations, no new address for Christmas cards, Mom had another bullet loaded. Mom, you were on all those painkillers after surgery. You're getting the timeline jumbled again, she'd sigh. They used Grandma's surgery against her, used my supposed independence as a weapon. Let me just ask, has your family ever spoken for you, or covered for you, or sent apologies as if you'd written them? That night, sitting on a hotel bed, Grandma asked me the only honest thing that mattered. What do you want to do, Chloe? I couldn't answer, not right away. And she didn't push. She just told me one last thing. Apparently, when she sent the money, she also sat at her kitchen table with Grandpa's fancy gold pen and wrote me a card. She made it perfect, rewrote it until the good paper ran out. So you never have to ask anyone for a roof over your head again. Love, Grandma. She mailed it to my mother, explicitly instructing, give this to Chloe with the keys. Grandpa hated debt. For years, he and Grandma lay awake, the farm mortgage crawling up the walls like a ghost. This house was supposed to be security. No one could ever evict me. That was her whole point. So I asked Grandma if she ever saw that card again. No, she figured it was tucked into my things, just like all her other cards. She knew me, it's what I always did, but nothing was there. I'd never gotten it. Right then, I stood up, grabbed my coat, and said, I need to see the house tonight, Grandma. My voice was totally flat, my ICU code blue voice. Finding the address wasn't hard. For 2 years, I'd been mailing birthday cards there, thinking it was just Harper's rental after her marriage blew apart. 412 Whispering Pines Way, 15 minutes from my parents. I parked across the street at 12:30. The house was beautiful. Cozy brick, gold light on the porch, sunflower mat, Harper's old wind chimes. Chalk drawings of a train and a little family on the driveway, her life safe inside my house. 2 years before, I actually helped Harper move into that house. Lost sleep hauling her heavy furniture through the front door. I hung her son Leo's curtains, gave them a cast-iron skillet as a housewarming gift because nobody in my family cooks with real pans. I drank lukewarm lemonade in that kitchen, listening to my mom loudly say how lucky they were to get a miracle on the down payment. I'd asked about the money once. Dad barely looked up and said, "Oh, Grandma's land sale money covered it. You know rural deals." It sounded so plausible, partly true even. I had carried boxes into my own stolen home, and then sincerely thanked my family for letting me help. Sitting in my car, I got a text. My mother, coffee tomorrow morning, just us girls, we need to talk about Grandma. She's been incredibly muddled lately. I went, but I knew the truth walking in. I sat at their counter, hands wrapped around coffee I didn't drink, wanting to steady myself, just like before delivering news to a patient's family. Mom began her speech, something she'd rehearsed, I'm sure. Grandma, been confused since surgery, honey, since losing Walt. Grief does strange things. We might want to manage her finances as a family. She made as a family sound sacred, almost threatening. She reached for my wrist, pressure heavy. It was very complicated back then. Grandma wanted to help both you girls, you know. Harper had nowhere to go, there was a baby, everything happened so fast. I just let her talk. Dad walked through, said something about a Thursday storm, and slipped away. Finally, I asked her directly, "Whose name is on the deed, Mom?" She dodged. Names, deeds, just paperwork. The family, the roof over our heads, that's what matters. And there it was, in plain language. The paperwork was mine. The roof was Harper's. While she talked, her eyes flicked toward the formal china cabinet where they keep 35 years of family paperwork. When the phone rang, some fence line issue with a neighbor, she breezed out the back door. I stood up and opened that cabinet. I know it. I've done my parents' taxes at that table for a decade. Third drawer down, deeds and titles in green, insurance in red. My hands shook as I opened it, but there it was, a new manila envelope. Inside it, everything, closing statement for the house, paid in full. Deed in Harper J. Brooks's name. The receipt from Grandma's wire transfer. For Chloe's house on the memo. And at the very bottom, a small ivory envelope, perfectly sealed, with Chloe in Grandma's farmer's handwriting. My card, sitting there, untouched, a few feet from the Thanksgiving table. Nobody had even bothered to open or destroy it. That sealed card, the one thing they didn't bother to rewrite or erase, cracked me open. I took photos of everything, returned the folder, then took the card because it belonged to me. I sat in my car, opened it, and read, "For Chloe, so you never have to ask anyone for a roof over your head ever again. Love, Grandma." I was still sitting there, numb, when my mom came out and tapped on my window, brightness turned way up. "Family carries family, Chloe, remember that." Like a command, like a blessing. I forced myself to wait one day. Then I went to Harper's. I stood at that red door, knocked, and when she saw my face, I watched her step back, all the wind knocked out of her. We talked in the kitchen, intense, careful voices while Leo built his towers in the next room. I asked her what she really knew. To her credit, if I can even say that, she didn't lie. She said she knew the money was Grandma's, had been told it was to help her start over and just not to fuss or call Grandma. "Mom told me, Grandma hates a scene, don't make it weird. It's handled." So Harper had signed where told, moved in, never questioned why Grandma never visited. "Would you have asked Chloe?" Harper wiped her eyes, voice shaking. "I had a sick kid, barely enough money, and Derek had run out on us." Leo ran in, pressed a Captain America sticker onto my hand, and vanished. We both just stood there, argument gone, flattened with shame. Harper tried to sound brave. "So what, Chloe? Do I tear up the deed, put my kid out on the street?" I looked at that sticker, the kid, and said what was true. "I don't know yet, Harper." I went back to work, back to where the rules make sense. Days later, we worked on a 9-year-old in the ICU after a brutal accident. At 4 a.m., his mother, a total stranger, hugged me, thanked me with everything she had. And I realized, strangers have thanked me with more warmth and sincerity than my own family has ever managed. Afterward, over bad coffee, I told everything to Sarah, a trauma nurse who's seen it all, who never minces words. I laid out the whole rotten timeline. She listened, quiet, and then said, "You know what you're doing, Chloe? You're triaging them. You're fixing their pain, managing their crisis. But they're not your patients. You're allowed to bleed too." I got home and did what nurses do. I charted. I laid out every date, the farm sale, the wire transfer, the closing, the deed, the fake card, every lie, and I built it into 4 pages, not a single adjective, just facts. Not a family misunderstanding. A careful plan by people who knew I'd never look too hard. Grandma, turns out, hadn't come to Michigan just to eat cake and play along. Before she boarded her flight, she'd found a top estate lawyer, Eleanor Vance, all glasses and zero sympathy because she already knew she'd need backup. I drove Grandma to the law office that morning, thinking I'd just kill some time in the waiting room, maybe read old magazines, half listened to the clicking clock. But Grandma gripped her cane and said, "You are coming inside, Chloe. This is your life." I didn't dare argue. Attorney Vance sat across from us, flipping through my typed timeline with the focus of someone dissecting an X-ray for bad news. When she landed on the memo about the wire transfer, she tapped it with her pen. Not a casual tap, a pointed one. "For Chloe's house," she read aloud. Her tone was all business, the kind that chills you a little even though you know you're the one in the right. In black and white, banking records, emails, a handwritten card, sealed. "I work estate fraud cases for a living. Let me be clear, this isn't the usual gray mess. Money was explicitly entrusted for one thing and then funneled off for something else. That isn't family drama, it's conversion. From a legal standpoint, you're standing on solid rock. In fact, Chloe, this is so clean I could take it to civil court tomorrow. And honestly, it might even cross into criminal territory, depending on how the county prosecutor looks at it." That word, criminal, settled in the air like a grim guest at our table. Nobody dared ask it to leave. Vance walked us through her plan, cool and methodical. First, a certified demand letter. My parents would have 30 days to return every cent, $185,000, before a lawsuit dropped or before criminal charges even entered the conversation. Then my grandmother caught me off guard. Her hands, all thin skin and swollen veins, folded together. She looked right at Vance, not at me. "Nothing happens without Chloe's say-so," she declared. "This was her gift. She decides how hard we swing the hammer." Suddenly, I was the missing puzzle piece. Everyone looked to me. I tried to sound calm, asking for a few days to think, but inside, my heart was hammering. When I got home, my phone practically vibrated off the kitchen counter. Missed calls, voicemails, every single one from my mother. So I called her back, once sinking into my couch as I dialed. Good thing, too. Her response was a hurricane in 3 acts. Act 1, outrage. A lawyer, Chloe? How could you drag your elderly grandmother to an expensive attorney over a private family matter? To her, calling a lawyer was the actual crime, not the money that had vanished. Act 2, rewriting history. Suddenly, everything was just a misunderstanding. Apparently, Grandma's gift was always meant to be flexible. Then the story turned technical. We only put the deed in Harper's name to protect you from massive gift taxes, she swore. She said it with the confidence of someone hopping you don't remember who fact-checked the paperwork. But I do all the paperwork. That's not even remotely true, Mom, I said, cold as ice. You remember perfectly well that the gift amount is under the lifetime exclusion. In fact, because I'm the one who explained it to you when Grandma sold the farm. Silence, 3 heavy, suffocating beats of it. There was nothing left to say, and then, in Act 3, there it was. The ugly truth came out in her hardest voice. Fine, yes, we used the money to buy the house for Harper. She was drowning, Chloe. She needed help. You were doing fine, you simply didn't need it. No apology, no rationalization, just policy. I was standing in the kitchen, the phone pressed against my cheek, finally seeing what I'd been dodging for years. This wasn't some slip-up someone was planning to fix. This was family strategy. The system was working exactly as intended. I hung up after a cold goodnight, feeling something inside me settle. Less an answer, more a realization. I knew what I needed to do about the letter. The next evening, my father rang the buzzer. He stood in the hallway clutching his baseball hat, looking haunted. I made him coffee and watched him perch on my sofa, my little, well-worn sofa, the mirror twin of the one now living at Harper's house. I said nothing about that. He pleaded in his old, gentle way. Make it stop, Gracie, please, this lawyer thing. It's going to ruin what's left of your grandmother's years. Families can survive a lot, but not the inside of a courtroom. Then he pitched me his fix. I had to look away out the window or I'd lose the poker face I'd worked so hard to keep. Just tell Grandma this was one big misunderstanding, that you knew about Harper's house. She'll calm down, change her will, anything. Harper keeps her home, and I swear to you, Gracie, I'll pay back every cent. I promise. My dad, living on a pension, looking at me the same way he used to look at our rusted water heater, promise on his lips, but nothing behind it except love and fear. One question hovered. You stood at the closing, Dad. You saw who owned the deed. 2 years of dinners, watching Grandma be handled like some animal in a chute. Why? He stared at his shoes for so long I almost interrupted the silence. Your mother knew it was right, and you're strong, Harper is. There it was, the family math, naked and cruel. The burden falls on the strongest because, well, someone has to carry it. He hugged me at the door tight. I love him. But this hug felt like a receipt, not comfort. The next day, Harper arrived with Leo, of course. I never forgave her for that, not really. Manipulation in a 5-year-old's crayon. It's your house, Aunt Chloe, Leo yelled, waving his lopsided drawing. A house, a red door, a stick figure named Aunt Chloe, all bright and sweet, stuck right next to my rent increase notice. Leo ran off to play with my plant. Harper's apology stumbled out, half-formed. That's how we do apologies in my family. Sorry is just throat-clearing before the main act. Mom says if you'll just sign, this nightmare goes away. Grandma calms down. No drama. We can be normal again, normal as if we ever were. I asked if she'd read the letter Mom drafted. Of course she hadn't. It was short, and why wouldn't it be? Its only job was to ship the lie from their mouths onto my signature forever. 3 people, 1 pen, and suddenly everyone wanted to hear from the invisible daughter, the backup plan, the one who always pays the bill. If you've ever held that pen, peace costs everything, and you're the one who pays. But a strange thought occurred to me that night. For the first time in my whole life, my family needed something only I could give. Suddenly, my signature was their most valuable possession. That night, I sat with Grandma in her hotel room, and she spilled the real family story. Not a tale about greed, but about survival and old debts. A tractor accident turned my teenage mother into the backbone of her family overnight. 6 years of lost girlhood, unpaid, unthanked. Grandma saw it, she said, but too late. I thought I was giving her a medal, Grandma whispered, but it was a bill. That's what she's been doing to you, passing the bill down. Love in this family flows only toward the person drowning. The strong one gets a pat on the back and the next debt. She looked me dead in the eye. I built the monster that's eating you now. The next day, my mother's letter showed up, hand-delivered. No stamp, no courage. One perfect sentence, as cold and factual as a death certificate. I, Chloe Jenkins, was fully informed and consented. She attached a yellow sticky note. Sign and come for Sunday dinner. Let's put all this behind us. Behind us, as if the last 2 years were a pothole and not a deliberate path carved out by their choices. I sat at my table with 3 pages lined up. On the left, my mother's lie. If I signed it, peace returned. Warm dinners, smiles, and my signature as the foundation stone for a lie. In the middle, my phone screen, forensic evidence, timelines, bank wires. On the right, Grandma's card, so you never have to ask anyone for a roof over your head again. One version of me would cover and bury the truth forever. The other, I wasn't sure, but I wanted to meet her. Monday morning, I called into work and took a personal day. I had one signature left to give, and it wasn't for my mother's letter. Attorney Vance's office was all lemon oil, polished wood, and quiet gravity. The affidavit was ready, short, sharp, and true. More truth than I'd held in my hands for days. I, Chloe Jenkins, was never told about the gift. I never received it. I never consented. We attached every piece of evidence. The notary stamped it, a sound like a gavel. That's when the grief slid in, cold and slow, and settled down next to me. Nothing dramatic in the moment, just that perfect, haunting stillness. Vance explained the next steps. The letter would go out that afternoon, demanding $185,000 back from my parents within 30 days, or facing civil suit and my affidavit as Exhibit A. They'll know it's you the second they open it, Vance said. That's the point, Eleanor. My family's never put my name on anything before. For the first time, my name meant something. The letter landed in their mailbox Thursday. That night, my phone started ringing, calls and voicemails in relentless waves. First, white-hot rage. How could you do this, after all we've done for you? By morning, the tears. My mother's voice soft and wet. How could I unleash lawyers on my own mother? The irony was so sharp I almost laughed. Friday night, pure ice. We got the letter, I hope it was worth it. Your father can't even eat. I ignored them all. I finally realized every conversation with my mother was a rigged stage. I refused to step on it again. Saturday, I found proof the story was spreading. My cousin texted me a screenshot from a group chat now missing my name. Their version was in bold. I'm suing my mother over a minor misunderstanding. Grandma's being preyed on by lawyers. My aunt, a woman I'd driven to chemo, sent a single line, I hope you're proud. Sunday dinner came and went without me for the first time ever. Harper posted Leo at the table, one chair missing, the gap so obvious it ached. I said nothing. The truth was already moving. I didn't need to repeat it. Tuesday morning, my father called, not to repair, but to arrange. Saturday, the house. Your mother wants this settled around the table like adults. Bring Grandma. I heard her stage whispering behind him. It was a setup, pure and simple. A united family, the letter before me, guilt in every corner, and me expected to bend once more. We'll be there, Dad, I said. I even let him feel satisfied. By Saturday morning, I was calm. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror as if prepping for a trauma code. Breathe. Check my gear. Know my job. When I stepped into their dining room, I already knew someone's version of this family wouldn't survive this meal, but mine would. They'd set the table as if Christmas had come early, linens, polished china, and a coffee cake nobody would eat. Leo was in the den. Grandma sat right beside me, cane hooked to the table. My mother waited until the coffee was poured, then shined up her best hostess smile to present the family's solution, sugar-coated and bright, as if we were planning a carpool instead of rewriting history. "All right, first things first," she said, her voice steady as ever. "Harper and Leo stay in that house. A 5-year-old needs stability, and I can't imagine anyone at this table wants to punish a child. Second, your father and I will pay Grandma back in full. $300 a month every month no matter what until we've repaid everything. And third, Chloe signs the waiver, Grandma drops the lawyer, and we leave this ugly phase in the past." She smiled like she'd just offered the world's simplest solution. "Family carries family. That's what we do." I sat there, listening, and let my brain do its thing, calculating numbers in the same reflexive way I figure out IV rates during a night shift. 185 grand divided by 300 a month. That's over 600 payments. More than 50 years. My mother would have to live to 114 to finish the last check. Grandma would have been gone decades by then. This wasn't a repayment plan. It was a funeral procession for a debt no one expected to actually pay off. Everybody at the table understood this except, maybe, my father. He was just staring blankly out the window. Mom slid a paper across the snowy tablecloth with all the confidence in the world, resting her gold pen on top. For the 4th time in 7 days, someone was offering me a pen. I ignored it, put my palms flat against the cloth, kept my voice calm, steady, not rushed. "I already signed a legal document, Mom," I said. "A sworn, notarized affidavit with Grandma's lawyer. It says, on the record, that I never knew about the money, never got it, never agreed to any of this. And it's legally attached to the letter you got on Thursday. The truth isn't up for negotiation anymore, and neither of us gets a say in that." The silence that hit the room this time was sharp and cold, and nobody wondered where to look. My mother's face flickered through 3 emotions in about 5 seconds. "You already signed it," she whispered, stunned. In that instant, you could see her realize the entire peace summit was lost before anyone even sipped their coffee. I'd walked in already carrying the ending. Then came the explosion, the kind you can hear coming your whole life. Her hands hit the table, hard enough that the china rattled and jumped. "Ungrateful, cold, heartless, you're tearing this family apart over a house, over property. Your sister had nothing, you were always fine, you've always been fine." And then the real creed appeared, the one I'd heard her shout at me on the phone more times than I could count. "You didn't need it." I let her words hang in the air, heavy as bricks, next to the untouched slice of cake and the unused pen. "You're right, Mom," I said softly. "I never needed a house, but I did need a mother who cared about what I wanted, who asked me before making decisions about my life." She tried to interrupt. I didn't let her. 30 years I'd waited my turn, not this time. "I've carried this family since I was 11. I run Dad's stacks of medical paperwork. I bailaid Harper out on rent. Twice. I handle Grandma's accounts. I even write my own thank you notes for flowers I never got. Family carries family. You love that phrase. But honestly, you two are the only people I know who expect everyone else to do the carrying." My dad stood up so fast, for a second no one knew if he'd speak or just leave. He turned to face the window, hands gripping a chair, completely present and also missing in action. Maybe the most honest move he'd made all month. Then it happened. My mother cracked. For a moment, all that hardened 60-something armor vanished, and I saw a frightened 16-year-old peeking out. Her voice was thin and scraped raw. "Nobody ever bought me a house," she sobbed, her hand shaking as she pointed at Grandma. "I was 16 when my dad's tractor flipped. I raised 2 boys on a stove I could barely reach. Mom worked nights at the factory while I gave up my nursing school. Did you know that, Chloe? I was supposed to be the nurse. I begged for help once, got told I was the strong one, and got handed even more to carry. So no, you don't get to be the very first woman in this family to put yourself first. That is not how it works." The silence now was something you could feel. It was the first, realest thing my mother had ever shared with me. It explained everything, her anger, her wounds. But it excused none of it. Both facts had to sit side by side. My grandmother chose that moment to speak softly but directly to her daughter. "She isn't the first to put herself first, Carol. She's just the first one I can finally support because I have the money now. Back in '79, I couldn't stand behind you, Carol. That debt, what I owe you, hurts more than anything. But I can pay it to Chloe, and I'm doing that, even if you won't let me pay it to you." Mom just stared at her mother for a long, punishing breath. Then, the ice settled back in. Whatever opening was there shut tight, and her face became a locked door again. "If that affidavit ever gets to court, Chloe, you're no daughter of mine." There it was, her final price. "Then I'll miss you, Mom," I answered, quiet. "But I've had a lot of practice. I've spent my life missing a mother who sat right across this table." Harper let out a tiny, shattered sob. I turned to look her in the eyes because this was for us now. "Here's my one condition," I said, my voice leaving no wiggle room. "It's not negotiable. The money gets paid back to Grandma by the adults who took it. Leo keeps his room, his roof, his childhood. The debt belongs to us, not him." My mother blinked, like I was speaking another language. Harper went silent. "Harper, you've got 6 months," I told her. "You head to a bank and get a mortgage for this house. Every penny from that loan goes straight to Grandma. Attorney Vance will oversee everything. You'll be the first person here to actually pay for the home you sleep in. And honestly, Harper, that independence will look good on you." I let my eyes rest on all of them. "I don't want the house. I want Barnaby, the monstera, on my windowsill. I know how it feels when the ground can be yanked from under you. I won't let Leo feel that way, ever. That's the difference between me and this family, and that's the only inheritance I want." Grandma reached for my hand then, the gold of her wedding band warm on my skin, and her voice was steady as stone as she looked at everyone. "That was always the point, Carol, so she'd never have to ask." That's when Harper really lost it. No more fake, polite tears, just jagged sobs. "I should have asked, Grandma," she cried, darting her eyes between the two of us. "I knew houses don't just show up free for people like me. I just didn't want to admit it. I'm sorry, Chloe. I felt sick with guilt since that dinner. I was just too much of a coward." Mom stayed silent. Not her normal punishing, weaponized silence, but a hollow one, the kind when you're out of rehearsed lines. I left before dessert. I liked the balance in it. Last month, I'd sat here as the lie collapsed over cake. Today I walked out and left the truth behind. I kissed Grandma's cheek, promised Leo a pizza night, and slipped out the front door. Dad followed onto the porch, hands jammed in his pockets, still looking for some bit of sky, anything but the emotional mess at hand. "She'll come around, Gracie," he said, soft. "She just needs time, you know your mother." "I'm done waiting, Dad," I replied, and meant it, with a gentleness that surprised me. Waiting for them to love me right was the only thing in my life I'd done for free. I got in my car. Grandma's note sat in the passenger seat, right where it belonged. I pulled out, passing that old, battered basketball hoop Dad had put up for Harper what felt like a lifetime ago. In my rearview mirror, the house got smaller and smaller till it was gone. And you know what? Leaving didn't hurt me at all. It took 5 months for all the legal paperwork to fall into place. Faster than Vance expected, slower than my mother could stand. No court drama. Truth on paper doesn't need to shout to make itself heard. My parents ended up having to refinance their own home, the house they'd owned clean since I was a teenager. That took care of most of what they owed. Harper paid the rest, just like I told her to. She walked into a credit union, nervous but determined, and handed over 2 years of dental clinic pay stubs. I'd even helped her set up her finances, because you can be hurt by someone and still show up for them. She signed her first mortgage ever on that house, in her name. 412 Whispering Pines Way finally belongs to its actual occupant. On a blue sky Tuesday, a bank clerk wired $185,000 straight to Grandma. Vance closed the file, no criminal charges, because it was never about punishment. It was just about making the ledger true. Mom and I have spoken once since. She mailed a card at Christmas, that signature cardinal front, just Mom inside. No words, I sent a card back. "Chloe," no explanations. "We're two stubborn women, separated by the mountain of things we never say. Maybe that changes someday. The force that built her is the same one powering me. I just finally decided it's not my job to fix her." Dad calls Sundays to dissect football, never bringing up a word about that dining room. Harper and I get coffee once a month, no fake scripts anymore. We're both learning to speak truth, sister to sister. Leo's trains are still chalked on the driveway. He'll grow up blissfully unaware of what his home almost cost. That's the win I wanted. And my grandmother. She gave me the gift again, the real way this time. A wire transfer right into my account, a proper letter from Vance. All legal, no taxes, not a penny outside the law. Embarrassing as hell, but here's the truth. My gut reaction was to turn her down. "Grandma, I can't take this." It burst out, pure reflex, after a lifetime of being the kid who carries things for everyone else. She just looked at me, quiet, steady. "Try saying that again, Chloe." So I tried, took a deep breath, looked her in the eye and said, "Thank you." It drained me to even allow it, to let myself be cared for. Last December, I closed on my own home. Toured 9 places, hired my own inspector, signed every page myself. It's a small brick patchwork, just 10 minutes from the hospital, with a kitchen window that traps pure sunlight. Barnaby the monstera owns that windowsill, growing bold and bright. Inside the cupboard where I keep my morning mug, taped to the door, is grandmother's note card. Ivory cardstock, worn edges, 2 years late and still perfectly on time. For Chloe, so you never have to ask anyone for a roof over your head again. Love, Grandma. I never framed it. Frames are for things that are finished. Instead, I read those words with my coffee every morning like a prescription. If your family loves you only when you carry burdens for them, have the courage to set that weight down. The people who really love you will reach in and take their share. The ones who watch you break, they weren't helping in the first place.